Well, welcome and thanks for joining us for this. For the last year or so, the discourse in India has been so focused on the question of corruption that there's been very little time to look outside, look beyond India, look what's happening in places like Europe. We do have the challenge in this panel to turn the attention from corruption to the really tectonic changes that are happening elsewhere in the world. So let me start straight by diving into it. Is Europe going to survive?
Europe means a number of things. There's a European economy, and will Europe prosper? It's a very wealthy part of the world. Will it continue to be wealthy, or will it decline? There's the European Union as a project of political integration, supranational, voluntary political integration based on consent, creating political and legal structures, a European Parliament, a rule of law through the European Court of Justice that are binding on sovereign member states. And then there is a Eurozone, which is a more advanced economic and monetary union with a single currency, which started 13 years ago and which is currently in the midst of intense pressure. I'll answer your question. I think the Eurozone will survive, but we cannot be sure because we're at a time of very high uncertainty. Things are happening in Europe which, frankly, were not predicted and arguably could not have been predicted in terms of the sheer political volatility that we're seeing in the past few months as a result of the crisis. And I think it's going to be a tough time for Europeans. They will have to change a number of the ways they think about themselves and they think about what they are entitled to. In a way, Europe has been on top of the world for, say, 300 years. Then it had to share leadership with the US for, say, a century. Now they have to adapt to a new world, a new geography. So I think it's going to be tough. I'm optimistic that this can be overcome relatively successfully. There's a price that will be paid for the inaction of the past few years and probably the lack of sufficient action of the next few years. But I don't think the euro is doomed. I think it's still time to reform what needs to be reformed to ensure the sustainability of this pioneering experiment in supranational pooling of our destinies.
Right. James, when you look at this from the outside and, sitting in India looking at Europe, it seems to have been a bit of a roller coaster ride. You read 1 week, all right, that's it, Europe's packed up, they can't save this. Next week, they found a solution, they found a package, everything's going to be okay. The next week again, it's over, it's history. It's enough to make you a bit seasick. So if you could wrap up for us what the actual position on the ground right now is.
Well, I think people in India are fortunate in one sense because at least when your country, which is a continent, is screwed up, you can blame corruption, whereas the Europeans can't do that. Our economy is relatively uncorrupt, and yet it's still a complete mess. So where are we? In the short term, things in Europe have got slightly better. The crisis has abated a little over the last couple of months. That's partly because Germany has decided that it would be too expensive to let Greece leave. Angela Merkel went to Greece in a sort of symbolic gesture. So the likelihood of a Greek exit has declined, added to which the European Central Bank has guaranteed a whole bunch of money. And that has meant that in the short term, things look a little bit better. But in the medium term, I rather disagree with Nicolas in one sense. I think things are looking much worse for the ultimate solution. And the difficulty here is, or rather the easy thing, is everybody knows what the answer to this crisis is. The answer is that Germany must pay for the debts of the other countries, and that's the bargain that needs to be made. But the circumstances in which that can happen are getting much, much more difficult. The Greek, Spanish, and Portuguese economies are all going to decline this year. The Eurozone is in recession. George Soros, about 2 years ago, I remember being told by a colleague in one of the sort of private meetings about what on earth do we do about this. People laid out the answer, which is, Germany pays, we mutualize our debts. And he said, do it now, because it's only going to get harder. And that's the problem. The political reality on the ground is getting worse as the economies of the Eurozone gets worse. And so that, I think, is the question, is it now possible to do this political deal in which Germany and a few other Northern European countries pay for the debts of the southern European countries. And I think I'm a little more pessimistic than Nicolas. I suspect it will happen, but I think it's going to be a pretty close-run thing.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for Retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.